I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Theodora to introduce her. She initially trained as a preschool teacher and later in primary education, followed by training in special educational needs in her native country, Greece. She worked as a preschool teacher for almost 15 years in mainstream preschool and in special education with children from 4 to 8 years, with multiple complex additional needs in Greece and a bilingual community school in UK. She joined higher education after completing her doctoral studies, and she worked in several universities in the UK, holding different roles and different posts. She also served as an early years care and education advisor for Save the Children and constructed consulting for UNICEF, working mainly in the sub-Saharan countries in Southeast Asia and Latin America, engaging it with EC programs, development and education. She participated and led components of big research projects like the Inclusion Project in Thanet and Lille, and the On Track multiple component intervention program for children 4 to 8, and violence against women. An educational perspective arise from her professional interests and challenges, exploring a wide, diverse range of topics. Example, teachers' perceptions of children's behaviour in reschools, storytelling, curriculum and pedagogy, relational pedagogy, international ECEC policy, home-based childcare learning and teaching in higher education, and lastly, her diversity of her research together with her experience of working in different countries and cultural milieu, different educational systems across and different ages, informal and informal education, all converge to lead to notions of relational pedagogy. That is, as human beings, we strive to make ourselves and others and our word such understandings of the human experience and existence is both an emotional affair and a cognitive venture between the inextricably connected. So I'm going to welcome you.
Thank you, Lydia. That shows my age. Anyway, good morning, everyone, and I'm really very pleased to be here. And thank you, the organizing committee, for the invitation. However, I must say that I'm very anxious and apprehensive. I know that among people who know about, they are knowledgeable about relational pedagogy, and indeed experts. I draw upon their ideas for my own work. So, yeah. I also know that participants come from all phases of education, and I'm only talking from early childhood education and care. However, I hope I say something which, if it's not completely new, it resonates with your own experiences and knowledge. Okay, here we are. What can we learn from early childhood education and care? I must admit here that I never set out to explore or investigate relational pedagogy. I've arrived there. And how did it happen? It started from my own aporia, which led me towards aporia, and I explained these two terms, and trying to make sense from my own experiences as an educator. I use the word aporia and poria, Greek words. Aporia is questioning. It's not a question where we seek an answer, definite answer. It comes out of our perplexity, wonderment, puzzlement. Why? How? So that's why when English, I'm not a native speaker, and when English and the thesaurus fails me, I go back to my roots. And poria is a journey, but how I understand this, it's not a journey with a predetermined destination. And it's not a journey which has a predetermined route. It's rather taking one path, taking the other path, and suddenly you arrive somewhere, you feel you're at home. Yes, this is where I need to be. And of course, over the years, as I was looking here and there, and arriving at relational pedagogy, I had to return back to my professional roots as an early years educator, and also to my experience from my own schooling. Okay, so what are my sources of inspiration and learning? The first one is research, which I've conducted with colleagues and my students in higher education. Students studying early childhood. Then it was the experience from Reggio Emilia. Also a literature review which I've conducted about relational pedagogy in early childhood education and care. And as I've said, reviewing, revisiting, and reflecting on my own educational roots. And here is my aporia and poria. Here is my questioning and my journey towards a relational pedagogy. As Lydia mentioned, I was a preschool teacher. I worked mainly in Greece. And then, late 90s, I found myself in higher education in the UK. I thought I knew a little bit about higher education in the UK through my studies. I didn't know anything. This is what I found. And it was quite interesting, actually, because it was a cultural and educational shock and clash. And it was for me, it was for my students as well, who I was there, these accented people, to stand in front of them. But this is another matter. It's another topic for discussion. However, what it did happen, I couldn't really recognize my preschoolers in my higher education students. It was almost like they needed to be told what they will be taught, how, what to do, and then assessment. What should I include my assignment at the end of the semester? And the more I try to explain, the more confused they're becoming. I would say, trust us, we've got 12 weeks, everything will make sense. But I don't think it was much comfort to them. So it was this puzzlement and perplexity. What has happened to my preschoolers? Which led me to do some research about the student experience of teaching and learning in higher education, students who studied early childhood. So I was joined with a colleague. Actually, we taught the same module called the Individual in Education, and we did some research. I won't go through the research process, but just two key findings from that project. It was, the students told us that their confidence increased. And the second one, it was about defining and redefining learning, how they started to understand learning. So I will just read a few statements here from our data analysis. The students told us, my confidence has grown. I'm not afraid to voice my opinion, to be judged. I soon gained confidence. My determination increased once I became familiar with other group members. I feel more able to voice my opinion and thoughts to people whom I didn't know before. People actually listened to me. This gave me confidence. My confidence has grown working with new people in different situations. So it's becoming self-aware. And then the next issue, it was about skills. So I picked up new skills, problem solving, working with others to a deadline, investigating different situations, improved communication, presentation skills, presenting with other people. I feel a transformation has taken place in myself. I have changed from being the most timid person in the class to becoming the more confident one. And then it came their perceptions about learning. So it changed perceptions of what learning truly means. In previous education, lessons were in order to teach you detailed information. Lessons at the university are more of a guidance. And this is quite interesting. You get to rely on new senses and ideas about the information given to us. To have to do it for myself, rather having it done to me. And then a question mark. Learning, the ability to learn through things you never thought you could do. And another one, it is like getting out of that mental prison. So this is what our students told us. But this was not a straightforward process. They also said, I rarely experienced group activities in the past. I struggled to get to grips with it. Previously, I only worked with people whom I knew before. I found difficult to communicate with members of our group. I found difficult to put forward my opinions, afraid that I will be judged. The strongest voices overruled the final outcome. I could have made clearer to other people who didn't commit it to the group work. I should value more my ideas. I should have taken more positive stance towards group work. And I will remember this in the future. So that wasn't a straightforward process, but what it was quite interesting for me, it was this picture of my preschoolers unfolding in front of me through their comments. There I have the students who were forthcoming, like my preschoolers, energetic, engaging with everything, everyone, and so on. And there were those who were hesitant, reluctant, observant, staying at the periphery, making comment now and then, and in other situations becoming more talkative, more engaging. And okay, what made this difference? Oh, before this, I will go back. What our students told us, it was this. What Gerd Biesta has told us very comprehensively. He said, teaching, and I will add learning, is not some kind of input that ideally should go directly into the mind of the student without any noise, disturbance, or transformation. And this is quite interesting, actually, because very often what we're doing, we try to conceal our students from any kind of difficulty, rather than enabling themselves to resolve any kind of conflict or dissonant information. And he said, teaching is about the construction of social situation, and the effects of teaching result from the achievements of the students in and in response to this social situation. The learners learn from their participation in social situation. And this is how we've organized the module. My colleague, she was Anne Lahif. She was a very experienced further education lecturer, and she was very much committed to reflective practice and reflective learning. Myself, as a preschool educator, I was very much into the Piagetian idea: give children a problem, give the resources, and they will resolve it. And that was part of my training. Indeed, I had 3 tutors, lecturers, who studied under Piaget. So you can imagine how much it was the influence. But also from Vygotsky's perspective, that we operate within the zone of proximal development, and we are there to facilitate learning. So we had actually, between ourselves, to negotiate our understanding and organize the module. And how we've organized it, it was 12 weeks, 4 problem-solving tasks over 3 weeks each one. It was group problem-solving. Groups for each problem-solving activity was different and randomly selected, so they didn't work with the people whom they felt confident, and that wasn't throughout the semester. And we've asked them to provide a solution or solutions, not the solution. And we've said, use your reading, discuss this case as a group, reflect, and come to a consensus, whatever it is, but you have to substantiate it. And also, knowing that conflicts do happen in groups, we've said, well, we trust you, you can resolve any differences. We don't want individuals to come and complain, oh, so-and-so doesn't work. But as a group, if you have ongoing difficulties, please come and we will discuss this with you. And the process, it was very much dialogue, group reflection, discussions, key reading, library resources, the usual things which we do as educators. And we had very little direct teaching. It was mainly discussion about the issues which they faced with their group activity. And at the end, we've told them that you have, it was two things. You have to solve each task as a group and have a presentation as a group, which it was assessed. And also, we asked them to reflect individually on their learning. What have they learned? And that formed also part of the data. So, I'm mindful of the time. So what we do, we very often talk about this relationship between student and educator. And what we've tried here, it was to shift attention from the educator to the learner, the educator being the knowledge holder, the powerful one, and breaking down these hierarchies. And that was quite interesting because my colleague would say, coming from a different culture, in British universities, students and lecturers first name calling, so we call them by first names. He said, oh, this is the democratic principle of higher education in the UK. I've said, it's not really. Since we assess them, it's not so straightforward. Anyway, and I must say, actually, I'm grateful to Anne Lahifi because she was this mediating force of understanding the cultural differences and the educational differences. And then it was from achieving individual outcomes and learning, we shifted towards collective outcomes. And for me, as a preschool educator, always I thought not all children, not all students contribute equally to a collective activity, but they contribute equally in ways which are equally important and significant. And also in different groups and tasks, they contribute in different ways, depending on the dynamics of the group, of the task, and so on. And the next thing, it was about not seeking certainty in knowledge, this is the solution, rather than seeking, exploring what is possible. And I've said earlier that we've shifted the attention from educator-student to student-peer relationships. It doesn't mean that we were not there. We were not there, but staying at the periphery. But before this, we ourselves, we had to negotiate our understanding. So we were coming across to students with consistent messages, or if sometimes students thought different messages were coming, we had to get together and renegotiate. Very often, especially when we share modules with other colleagues, the students say, but so-and-so told us something different, and so on. So it was quite interesting. I've started from exploring students' experience of teaching and learning in higher education. But what I found out, it was all about relationships. And this is how I've started really to think about it. And what our students told us, it was this, or how we've interpreted our students' messages. Confidence comes out of their awareness of themselves as individuals and as learners in relation to others and because of others. Nothing new here, but, well, I had to do the research to find out. Came out of seeing themselves in different light, depending on the task and also the group dynamics. and came out of gaining skills and competencies. So still, it's part of what we're doing. And realizing their potential and also what is possible to do. And that's, for me, it was very, very important. And this is the underlying principle in early childhood education and care. And also, redefining learning. That was quite interesting. It's not concrete knowledge, but as I've said, is what is possible there. And it's about self-transformation and outcome transformation. And it's about contribution to a collective task good, rather than individual achievement. And as I've said earlier, we all, and I know that, I worked in a school for children with severe learning difficulties. All children can contribute in different ways, and all together they can produce something which can be powerful when they see it. Because I worked as a preschool teacher, and I had 2 years training. I went to a special school, children 4 to 8 years old with severe learning difficulties. I tried to implement the good practices I was taught. It didn't work. I went back to my preschool principles. So yes, everyone can contribute. And what our students told us, I witnessed also when I visited Reggio Emilia preschools. It was around the same time when we did this research with higher education students. I will just refer here to 2 instances. One, it was, I've observed the atelierista, the artist, working with 2 children. And the other one, it was the preschool teacher working with her class. In the first instance, the atelierista worked with 2 children, and the 2 children had a lump of clay in front of them, and they've started manipulating it. And I could see the atelierista paying attention to each child, giving now and then, making some suggestions, showing, demonstrating what to do. And suddenly, when the one child has finished his sculpture, I thought it's beautiful, and the atelierista said something, the child smiled, and with her thumb, just took the top of the, to my horror, the top of that sculpture. But the child was unfazed. He carried on, and he created something new. And I thought, oh gosh, that's quite powerful, actually. First of all, she didn't give the same instructions to children. They produced their own sculpture. And the other thing is, by doing this, it was almost some kind of shared understanding what's happening. The children had the experience, potentially, but taking the fear out of what you're doing. It's not one way to create something. And that was quite powerful for me. It's what is possible again. And the other one, it was the preschool teacher. She was sitting next to a table, and around the table were 4 children. On the table were 2 baskets. In one basket, it was little envelopes, like wallets, blank, white, and the other one had some decorated wallets. So the 2 children around this table, they were taking one wallet, the undecorated, they started decorating and put it back, putting onto the other basket. Another child folded again and again and again a piece of paper, and then cut it into the size approximately of the envelope of that wallet. And the 4th child will take these little cards and decorate them. The teacher invited each child individually. Of course, I didn't understand what was happening. It was in Italian. The children would say something. The teacher copied it in a piece of paper. Then the child would take what the teacher had written, choose one of the decorated cards, and copy it. So I've asked the preschool teacher at the end of the session, I've said, oh, what was happening there? She said, oh, well, tomorrow is Kara's birthday. And I've invited them to think very, very hard of a special message which they want to tell Karen. And then she explained, and because I know that not all children are very skillful to produce this individual wallet and decorate it, yesterday we prepared the wallets, and today I invited them, whoever wanted, to come and decorate them. So that was really, again, very powerful, what you tell the children, and you don't explain, but in a very subtle way, what it matters, it's not what you get. It's how other people feel about you, what they have to tell you. And the other thing, it was a recognition that not all children have the same skills, but all can contribute in some way. And that became a collective activity. My colleague, Dr. Paulette Love, oh, sorry, I don't know how to go back very quick here, was at Reggio Emilia with me at that time. And we had conversations. And I've said, well, seeing how the teacher worked, it's not really so different from how I work with young children. But I must tell you that was ages ago, and we didn't have a curriculum at that time, learning outcomes and so on. She said, well, that was my experience as well. And I've said, what has changed? And we know that with the learning outcomes-based curricula, children's assessment, in many ways, early childhood education and care has become an intervention. We are very much focused on specific areas of learning. I don't want to dismiss them. What I want to say is the anxiety of the educators has increased as well. So, and this is especially for children and families who experience disadvantage. It becomes compensatory service rather than the way I've experienced it. So coming back to the UK, we've organized a conference, and it was titled Reclaiming Relational Pedagogy in Early Childhood. And the outcome of that conference, it was an edited volume titled Learning Together in the Early Years, Exploring Relational Pedagogy. And contributors in that edited volume explored the relational pedagogy in the context of early year settings, but also in the training and development, staff development of early years practitioners and students. But also at the same time, I shouldn't dismiss that other people starting to explore relational pedagogy. And looking at this research at these early stages, that was late 2000s. Well, we've started 2005, 2004, but the edited volume came out in 2009. And certain types of relationship appeared there. One, it was relation formation with others. And that's relation formation with the educator, but also with peers. And this is something which we know very much, and we support it, and the influence of psychology and the spatial attachment theory have been instrumental in this. But also, less explicitly, although a few researchers more explicitly, they talk about relation formation and relation finding in the content, the materials, the context of the educational activities, and also the processes of the educational activities. And certain relation pedagogy was also underpinned by several dimensions. The affective dimension, how the learner, the child, the student feels, and the educator in this process, it was and remains the priority. Then it was the dialogical, the communicative exchanges, the interactions which we have. And in the early years, it was quite interesting. It was the non-verbal communication. And then having stimulating, engaging, challenging, emotionally safe learning environments. And the last one, it was the educator, pedagogical knowledge and competencies. Fast forward 15 years later, I've conducted a literature review. I can't say it's comprehensive. but about relational pedagogy in early childhood education and care. All these 4 dimensions, the different types of relationship were there. And although initial research, it was very much from developmental perspectives, although some also drew on Bakhtin's dialogical work and so on. In new research, relational pedagogy has approached by many different disciplines and theoretical perspectives. And the initial types of relationships are there, but another one has emerged, which is beyond the boundaries of early year settings. It's relationships which children and students form with the wider social environment as well as the natural world. Post-humanists talk about more than human world. I won't go into detail about these things because I don't have the time. But from my point of view, another dimension emerges, especially from relation formation with the natural world. This is the spiritual dimension. And it's not spirituality in terms of religion, related to religion or deity. It's spirituality as understand is this awe and wonderment. There is something more, bigger than our own existence. And that really hit me because I did some research. I've said stories, but it was about Father Christmas. And this is where I came across this kind of awe and wonderment where the children have when they try to explain the unexplained. And sometimes they come with ideas which really, in our logical thinking, don't make sense. For example, a young, 7 years old, talking about Father Christmas said, well, if you see him, he's not real. Well, that defines really logic. Oh, I've said, and how this is happening? You see, Father Christmas doesn't want people to know his good deeds, so you never see him. And those who see in the shopping center are pretend Father Christmases. So, yeah, sorry. But what it came from this literature review, it was this, play. And play, as with relationships, have quite a difficult time in early years education and care. And it's beyond the scope of this talk to go through this. But play, what kind of play? And for me, it was quite interesting, is child-initiated and motivated play. Play which starts from children's own aporias. What is this? How do we do it? Why? And so on. And joyful play. I came across Karjalainen's and her colleagues' paper, and she talked about joyful play, and she drew actually on Bouber's philosophy. And that for me, it was, oh, yes, I can see this. I can see myself as a preschool educator. So, and as I've said, is child-initiated play, but it's something which starts from children's own aporias, their own wonderment. And joy, well, what's in joy? Why joy? I look at the Oxford Dictionary and says, okay, joyful, what does it mean, joy and being joyful? It's this sense of elation. It is gratification, delight, being euphoric, being over the moon. And it's just reading the description or the definition, you already feel it in your body. It's an embodied experience. But Karjalainen as well says this. She said, it is a relational phenomenon. We always have this sense of joy in relation to something else, either another person, it can be our pet, my little dog, it can be, even when we're on our own, is in relation to something else, reading a book, doing our favorite activity. It's a relational phenomenon. And then Nordstrom says, joy is a performative force. We interact. And in this way, bodies, objects, our energies, and we transform each other. We depend on each other. So that was quite interesting for me. And as I've said, joy is an embodied experience, and self-initiated and motivated play starts from children's interest. I will just refer here. Of course, I'm all okay. Sorry. Yogurt making, that was quite interesting. Casually, two boys were playing with Legos. They were chatting, asking for help, showed to each other what they did, and so on. And suddenly one of the boys said, "My mom yesterday made some yogurt." Yogurt? Nah. Yes, she made yogurt. It was yummy. How did she make the yogurt? Oh, with milk. And the girl overheard the conversation, said, "No, you can't make yogurt from milk. Yogurt is thick. Milk is runny." And the second boy said, "Well, yes, there is yogurt which is thick, 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 but there is yogurt which is not so thick." Yeah. But so other children joined, and they've started this conversation about the yogurt. How do you make it? Where do you find the milk? We buy it from the supermarket. And one of the boys said, "Miss, is it really, can we really make a yogurt?" I said, "Yes, we can." And then another one said, "Can we make yogurt here in our classroom?" But the first time around, the teacher she didn't engage. Only when the question came, said, "Can we make yogurt here?" she started to engage. What it led, it was quite interesting. Because they had to make the yogurt, they had to taste it, they had to find recipes from grandmothers, mothers, and find what they needed, all these things. The truth is that some children engaged from start to end, some drifted apart, some rejoined, all tasted yogurt. Not everyone enjoyed it. Some they didn't, because, "Oh, it's sour." Yes, but you have to eat yogurt because it's healthy. And some had entrepreneurial ideas. "Oh, can we sell it? How much?" So it's quite interesting, actually. And what is the role of the educator here? It's this attentive listening. Initially, didn't engage and said, "Oh, yes, we can make yogurt." And, and emotionally attuned, really being part of this and enjoy it, engaging really. And I like the idea of the educator, the connective glue, the connective figure. You don't take over the children's ideas to reach to a predetermined outcome. You are there just to facilitate these relationships, these multiple relationships, the relationships which we form with others when we work, with the objects, with the process, with everything. So, and really enjoying, being joyful yourself. So it's, however, this wasn't just 1 minute incident. It wasn't just a little incident. It took time and reminded me of the notion of keros. And what is this? This, as I've said earlier, when I can't find words, thesaurus doesn't help me. I go back to my own understanding. It's this opportune moment. It's this appropriate and favorable time where you engage and you join a path, a poria. And in keros, actually, the children learn at their own pace, in different ways, and in unhurried and slow manner. And we know about slow pedagogy as well. So, however, these processes are not easily recorded. In play, we can see all types of relationships happening simultaneously. It involves our emotional capital. And also, we have to utilize our pedagogical knowledge. We have to make the environment challenging enough, but also facilitating enough. So it's a process which is intricate, sophisticated, and complex. And many things are happening there in a subtle and unconscious way. We're not really aware. And it's very much an embodied, a visceral experience. And that defines, of course, systems of child assessment and educator accountability. However, I like this. I came across to Porges' polyvagal theory. And it's a complex theory. I don't claim I understand everything. But his concept of neuroception really appealed to me. Because finally, I had an explanation of what I called, when I worked as a preschool teacher, the early years experience as a kinesthetic experience, which is motor and aesthesis, which is the sensory experience. And what Porges tells us is this. The unconscious and subjective and intersubjective processes are often triggered by viscerally experienced stimuli. These are detected by the internal organs and pass through the core stem onto the brain. And then the brain informs the peripheral nervous system and we respond and act. We are aware of the last, but not of the previous processes. But this visceral experience, it does make sense, because when we're happy, when we feel joy, we feel it inside our body. When we're frightened, then we have palpitations, we don't breathe well. When I'm anxious, I lose my breath, and so on. And he explains this is really a subtle and complex process, but is equally important for us to remember. Because other researchers from the same field, they have said, we don't always go into situations with predetermined intentions and emotions. These very often are a response to how other people behave and feel. And in this process, we start to regulate ourselves and interregulate our behavior. This visceral experience for me, it was very interesting, because Lydia mentioned the project which we did ages ago between Thanet and in Kent in the UK and Lille in France. When I spoke to pupils, primary school pupils, one of them told me this. She said, I like this teacher. Oh, I said, why is this? She said, I don't really know how to explain. Then thought a little bit and said, I will give you an example. You give her a Christmas card. She will read it, she will say thank you, and she will put it on the notice board. She doesn't start, and the girl started with an exaggerated, oh, how lovely it is, how good you are, and so on. Yeah. Children know when we're authentic. Yeah. They sense it. Yeah. And another boy said, I can't believe teachers can be like this. I said, what do you mean like this? He said, that teacher really likes to talk to us. She enjoys that. And do you know, she talks to us like we're adults. Well, respect. How children get respect. And the younger child told me, I said, oh, and how do you enjoy school? He said, oh, well, very deflated. My teacher says I'm good. Oh, I've said, that's good. Yes, but you know, when we're in the circle time, it's like something cuts me off. When the child realizes that what we say and how they experience the whole situation, they are not consistent. So going back to this visceral experience, to nonverbal communication, and just I was reading a paper, I think it's old, but it was saying that only 5 to 7% of our communication is verbal, actually. The rest is nonverbal, it's bodily expression, facial expression, gesture, and so on. Okay, just to go back to where I've started, and I've started from my own aporia. It took me to a journey to aporia, and I didn't expect to arrive at relational pedagogy. But thinking about it, what is it really? We have to trust the learner as a knower. Our learners, the young ones, or our students in higher education, they come with experience. They know things. They have their own motivations, and we need really to acknowledge this and allow them to engage with it. And I'm saying this because what I found when I worked in different countries as an early years advisor in sub-Saharan countries, we go there with our own ideas, with our PhD ideas. We introduce ideas there, and because we have this cultural and language gap, we assume that certain concepts don't exist. They don't exist the way we think and express them. And it was this work which made me actually think, we have to go there and be very careful and attentive and trust that these people know. They have survived for eons, but we need to give them time to explore their experiences and for us to become aware what this experience is. And reinforce, not us to reinforce, but help them to reinforce what is good, what is positive. And if there are practices or ideas which can be challenged to do this in a very safe way. And ultimately, we can only add a little bit. It's like the cherry on the cake. So trust our learners, and I think this is what my colleague and we did. And this is how I worked with young children. But then I come from a culture where we indulge the children too much. Very often I say, for a long time in my life, I was invisible. When I had my child, suddenly, I existed in the world, and actually I became Dimitri's mother. I didn't even have a name, just to show how children really are so much in our ways of life. And encourage this questioning, these aporias. And, but we need stimulating experiences, or even in the same environment, just be attentive enough to take over something. And allow this experimentation, trial and error. Failure is not a bad thing. It's what do we learn. But also just allow them time, keros, to find out their potential and work out what is possible. And this is what we need now more than ever before. Well, I Google Gemini and they've said how far apart I can plant courgettes. Gave me the answer. But there are other skills which we need. And I'm going back to my own education. And I've said, in and through relational pedagogy, the learners emerge as social, cognitive, and political beings. This is Aristotle. And political beings in the sense that we are members of polis, of community, of society. And this is very important, and that brings me back to relational pedagogy beyond the confines of the early year settings, in the wider social world and natural world. The reality is that we can't conceal children from the reality of life. They're exposed and they see on TV what's happening in Gaza, what's happening with environmental disasters. So children have questions. Very often we try to reassure them rather than understand what's happening, and reassurance comes from their understanding. And I go back again to my own roots, saying that for relational pedagogy, we need to exercise phronesis. It's almost this practical wisdom. we take ideas, these intellectual virtues. One theorist says this, the other one says the other thing. And we have to operate within systems which are competing and often conflicting. And we have to use our own phronesis and make decisions in terms of what we're going to do. And I'm saying this because that takes me back to my own education, my schooling. I was in high school, my whole years of high school, when in Greece we had dictatorship. Our educators, and as a lot of us, were under surveillance. Very little things were discussed, but we were taught classic Greek. And classic Greek, and because of the fear of our educators, the focus, we did classic Greek text analysis. And the focus was on the syntax and etymology. And in Greek, classic Greek, but even modern Greek, we have these long, long sentences where you have to decide when it becomes a subject, a subclause becomes a subject or object or auxiliary or whatever, which I loved it actually, and this is a curse and blessing as well. But our teachers never ever discussed about what it was, this text. But I do remember one thing, we did Plato's Apology, and it was Socrates' dialogue with his friends when they tried to convince him to escape from prison and to avoid death. And at one point, the question posed by Socrates, it was this: who should decide? Is it the few who have the power or the many? And our teacher made a distinction here between the crowd, ochlos, and the many as an organized society. But she said, no discussion, think about it, the question about democracy. What I'm trying to say is sometimes we can't directly fight the system, but we choose how to do things. The same period as well, 21st of April, it was the day when the colonels took over and were supposed to have big celebration, big speeches, and so on. These speeches would take place at the front of the building. It was a neoclassical building with some steps further up. But one year, one of the teachers who was tasked to have this speech, he took us at the back of the building. 2 little steps to get into the building. And I do remember him, his hand casually in his pocket. From the second step came down. I can't remember what he said, but I do remember how dismissive he was. And very quickly said, okay, let's go in now. He subverted the whole thing with his own attitude, with his own stance. And these are the messages, the subtle messages which we convey to our students. And relational pedagogy, it's not just another type of pedagogy. It's not a technical issue. From my point of view, is an ethical stance. And this is an ethical stance which we take toward our own students, but also the social and natural world. We need to acknowledge that our students come with their own experiences, and also to have this responsibility for the wider and social and natural world, now more than ever, and I will leave it there. I would just like to say that this talk, as always, is dedicated to my students, big and small, with my thanks for what they have taught me. They have taught me more than I could ever teach them. And always with my apologies if I haven't served them well, always and each one. But also my thanks go to my colleagues. I had really inspirational colleagues and teachers. And I feel gratitude to being involved. Either I worked with them closely or indirectly. And many people whose work has influenced me and their thinking. So thanks to all colleagues and other teachers. And I will just leave it there. This is Pericles. He's saying to his troops, what we leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. Thank you very much.